the entire limits of my alignment. So if we look and I zoom out here, without any other mouse clicks or anything, just zoom out. Can everybody see there is this cyan box that's tracing along that geometry? That is actually my corridor. Now, that corridor, I like to think of it as a briefcase. And I like to think of the template drops as folders that I would put in that briefcase. So the template drops themselves only exist if there's a corridor that exists. So I just want you to know that. So now, it's asking me, on my heads-up display, on my mouse, as I move around, we can see there's a dialog that's following me. This says select template, Alt, down to browse templates. Now, what we're telling you is use the Alt key on your keyboard next to the space bar. It's a shortcut. In addition to the down arrow on your keyboard, when you press both, so I use the Alt key and the down arrow at the same time, we get the pop-up dialog to select the template. Some of you probably know I could get that by hitting the Browse button on that active dialog a minute ago, but let's try and understand what the prompts are, because you get really fast. You're actually faster doing it that way many times than using those dialogs, because they move around and you got to move your mouse all over. So in this instance, it's asking me to choose a template. Now, you remember I loaded the Create Template library earlier? This is usually where people are like, oh no, because they'll start the program, start making a corridor, and realize they didn't do that first step. So they have to backtrack, they cancel, and they leave an empty corridor in their file. So take your time, understand this process, because I've seen users that have multiple corridors in their file by accident. So just to be aware. So, what do I mean by that? Well, if we look, we can see that where the Pick Template dialog is, there's a plus that allows me to expand that file path. And if I hover on that, notice it represents that file we just opened earlier. If yours does not say that, we would have to cancel this, go back, and load the other library up. Now we're looking at that template library, and we're going to make a selection. So as I come through here, we're going to come through and we're going to select our particular project template. And what did we call this guy? Conceptual, right-click, active profile, left-click, blah, blah, blah. It is the 2-lane and turn lane row. Okay, perfect. So on our list, under my project templates, notice I mouse-clicked on this folder. This is where I'm looking. And if I look down the list, we're looking for one that's titled 2 lanes plus turn lane dash rural. And I've highlighted that for everyone. So this selection right here is the one we're going to choose. And just in this instance, now, my project may not be that template, but it doesn't matter. If most of my project is that template, I want to use that. I can cut away pieces later. You're going to see that. Don't waste your time trying to overthink this and, oh no, that's not the right one. Or even worse, I'm not a big proponent of the Franken templates, as we call them, unless you really, really know what you're doing with those. And those are the ones that decide everything, is what I'll say. Usually we spend more time probably fixing people's stuff. They think they know how they work, and it just never works out. So I'm going to select OK. This loads this dialog. It loads that template here in the bottom of that dialog. That's what we've effectively done there. So now, when I move my mouse back on screen too, you'll notice the pop-up dialog as well confirms that same path. Again, it's a choice. If we like it, we're going to left-click in this case. So I'm going to left mouse click to confirm that. Now, when we do this, we're prompted for start station limits. When I take a look at this, we can see a few things about the heads-up dialog. As I'm moving my mouse around, notice there is a line that's tracing along that roadway geometry here. See that line there, burnt orange line. This is establishing where we're going to start our project. I like to think typical sections. whenever we build typicals, we have a start and stop limit for that typical. Well, in this instance, we're going to go ahead and we're going to set these limits. Now, when we do this, we're going to actually put this at the very beginning of the project. And, you know, I could just move my mouse to the bottom, but I could also take advantage of some of the shortcuts. And if you notice, it says the start station. If you use the Alt key, it will read the geometry and go to the very beginning. So I don't need to be worried about that value. So by using the Alt key on my keyboard, I want you to watch, when I press this, watch what happens to that line. It jumps to the beginning of the geometry. And when you're working big projects, you're not going to zoom all the way out or zoom all the way in or pan all over. If you know that does that, you just hit it. And you can zoom out and confirm it if you want, but I trust it. I mean, I hate to say it, that's the one thing that works really well all the time. So, there you go. So now, notice I have a padlock on that heads-up display, and it's grayed out. It's understanding that geometry, happens to be at station 50 plus 00, and all I need to do is confirm by selecting a left mouse button click. Now, when we do this, this next part is going to be kind of unique. And the only reason we're doing this is to show you the options that exist, guys. So on this, it's asking for an end station. Did I go too fast?
No.
Oh.
I pressed the wrong.
Okay.
I did right instead of left.
Yes, it always feels like, you know, it's like a game. You got to put your left foot in, your right foot out, you know, that whole thing. Yes. And there was an old gentleman in one of my classes one year, and I'll never forget his name.